Hey, welcome back. And if you're new here, my name's Christina Kent and I'm a fine artist based out of San Francisco. And in this video, I want to talk about why I like to work with art galleries as a fine artist. When people hear that I work with galleries and sell my work through galleries, one of the biggest questions I'm asked is, what kind of cut do they take? And oftentimes people get really surprised and shocked when I say that the gallery usually takes 50% of the sale price of my work. And if you're an artist interested in working with galleries, you might see that big cut that they take and also start to wonder, is it really worth it to work with galleries? Why would anyone do that? Why would anyone hand over 50% of the price of their work to a gallery? Especially today, I think it's easier than ever to be an independent artist and work outside of the gallery system. And I see a lot of videos on YouTube and I talk with a lot of other artists who do sell their work independently. So I thought it was important to address why I choose to work with galleries and what some of the benefits are. And I should mention that I don't work exclusively with galleries. I don't have representation, which, if you're not familiar, is when you are exclusively selling your work through that gallery. You usually aren't selling your work on your own, or maybe for a certain region, say for San Francisco, you only sell through that particular gallery. Instead, my situation is I work more with emerging artist galleries where I sell my work through those galleries, but we don't have any exclusive relationships. So I can still sell my work on my own, I can still work with multiple galleries and be in multiple shows. So I'm not fully working with galleries, but I'm also not fully selling my work on my own. I do a combined approach. And so I wanted to share why working with galleries for me is an important part of my business as a fine artist. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of working with a gallery, and if you feel like that's a good decision for you, then I'm also going to share some ways that I like to identify the galleries that I want to work with. Because also it's really important to note that not every gallery is the same, and also not all galleries are going to be a great fit for your work. So it's important that if you do want to work with galleries, you choose your galleries very carefully, and I'm going to talk about how to do that. So what are the pros of working with galleries? For me, the biggest pro by far is the collector base. And that's because for me, I didn't come from the art world. I didn't know much about it. My background is in economics. I didn't know any art collectors growing up. And so when I got into the art world, I didn't have that many connections. And the art world, from my experience, tends to be kind of small, close-knit community, and it can be hard to find connections with collectors who might like your work. And oftentimes collectors like to go through galleries. Some collectors will go directly to artists, but a lot of collectors have a specific relationship with a gallery and they like to work closely with the gallery when buying art. So if you work with a really good gallery, oftentimes they will have collectors that they've been working with for years, and they can be an advocate for you and share your work to those collectors and get them really excited about it. The way that it benefits me as an artist is that I'm able to sell a lot more work through these galleries. I do sell my work online, I sell it at pop-up events and open studios, but I've found that sometimes if I'm trying to sell a piece on my own, it could take months and months, versus if I give it to a good gallery with a strong collector list, they can sell it in a matter of weeks or even days. So for me, the ability to be able to sell my work quickly is just a huge advantage. And not only will a good gallery be able to sell your work more quickly, but oftentimes they'll be able to do that and raise your prices at the same time. So even though they're taking this 50% cut, maybe they're raising your prices by 50%, and then they're still able to sell your work, or they raise your prices by even more than 50%, and they're still able to sell your work. So that means that you are actually making more money even though you're paying this big cut to the gallery. So being able to sell more of my work and sell it for higher prices is the biggest reason by far that I work with galleries, but there's some other reasons that I think are really helpful as well. The first is customer service. A good gallery will handle all of the customer service with your collectors. That means if they have questions about the piece, if they want to maybe see how it would look in their home, if they want to come by the gallery and view the piece, if they have questions about varnishing or framing or shipping or anything like that, a good gallery will handle all of those things for you. And that's a really big deal. For me, as an independent artist, sometimes I can spend hours or even days in the studio packing work, shipping work, meeting with collectors, answering questions on emails. All of these things take a lot of time, and they take away time for me to have in the studio. So when I work with the gallery and they handle all of these customer service concerns, then I can spend more time focusing, painting, and making my work. And it's totally possible for you to handle the logistics on your own. That's what I usually do. You can also pay an assistant to handle logistics for you, and that could be cheaper than giving a cut of your income to the gallery. But I found that it's really nice and streamlined to have the gallery help me with these things. And I also feel like as a small business person, just because I can do something on my own, it doesn't mean I should do that thing. I feel like my greatest talent and my greatest contribution is painting and making the work and being in the studio. And so yes, I can talk to customers, but for me, it's not where I really excel, and it can be really tiring and draining. As a painter, I really appreciate solitude and time to myself and time to be able to drop into that quiet, contemplative space and really connect deeply with the work. And if I'm answering emails and setting up meetings with collectors, it can be really difficult to get back to that mind state for creating. So I find that allowing the gallery to do this for me and seeing the gallery as my business partner who handles those things for me is just immensely helpful for my studio practice. Another nice perk of a gallery, and this is if you're working with a specific brick and mortar gallery, not with like an art consultant, is that galleries will have an exhibition space, and oftentimes if you have a good relationship with them, then you will be able to show your work in that space, either in a group show or in solo shows. And that can be really great because, especially if, like right now, I've been working on lots of larger pieces, and people tend to really like to see those in person. So having a nice exhibition space is really important for that. Also, having that space allows me to take professional quality exhibition photos of my work, and that's been helpful for applications for grants, for residencies, things like that. I think just career-wise, it's really nice to have exhibitions on your CV. Also, if you have art exhibitions and openings, people can come to those and enjoy seeing your work, and so I just find that it is very useful to have a space to exhibit my work. Once again, this is also something that you can do on your own without a gallery. I know artists who rent out spaces and put up their own exhibitions, so it's totally possible to do this without a gallery. I just find it's a lot easier, once again, logistics-wise, to let the gallery handle that because they already have everything set up. So for me, that's more of a convenience factor of working with the gallery. The next thing about working with the gallery is marketing. So galleries can help you a lot with your marketing for your work, for your upcoming shows, things like that. And it does seem like in the past, it seems like galleries were the only ones who could really do this. Now with social media, with YouTube, with other formats, it's a lot easier for artists to market themselves. And I think that galleries actually expect the artists to do that a lot. But at the same time, I think a good gallery will still market your work, and they'll probably have connections to either art publications or other venues to help promote your work and get it out to the wider public. So while I think this is becoming a smaller thing, like I said, now with social media and so many ways for artists to promote their work, it's still helpful to work with a gallery who has connections and is able to help you with that. So these are what I see as the main pros of working with galleries. Once again, for me, the biggest thing is that it helps increase my revenue. I'm able to sell more work and I'm able to sell it for a higher price. And that's just huge for me. That's a big help. And for me, that justifies paying that 50% commission to the gallery. And then in addition, there's all these more administrative things that they tend to help me out with and some small career perks that I find to be really useful. So all these things taken together, I really see the relationship with the gallery as the gallery is my partner and we're working together. And I find that to be just a really helpful relationship. So what are the cons of working with galleries? Well, the biggest one, of course, is that 50% commission. It can be really painful to see a painting of yours sell and then only get half of that amount. Yes, it oftentimes feels like a lot of money, maybe it is a lot of money, but for me, if I wasn't able to sell that painting on my own and I'm able to sell it through the gallery, then it more than justifies paying that amount. So yeah, I think that's the biggest con, the main thing that I think about when working with galleries, but there are a couple other things that I find to be drawbacks as well. The first is loss of control. So if you're not interacting directly with your collectors, you might not even know who are the people who are buying your paintings. And that can be really unsettling, especially as a small business. I find it really helpful to know who my customers are. So if the gallery is not willing to share that information with me, which galleries often do not, in my experience, that can be a little difficult to deal with. You also lose control with how the gallery is interacting with the collectors and how the gallery is even run. So if the gallery is poorly run or if they're not interacting well with collectors, then that can reflect poorly on you and that can actually prevent you from being able to sell more work. So you want to make sure that the gallery that you're working with is really legit and is able to manage those customer relationships well and is able to do things like make sure that it's open when it says it's open, like keeping these regular gallery hours, responding to collectors on time, paying people on time. Like these are all really important things that if the gallery doesn't do that, then it can negatively affect you as an artist. And then the other big risk is that even if you do have a great relationship with the gallery, maybe you're selling lots of work through them, if you are so reliant on that gallery, and if they're maybe the main way that you're selling your work, then if something happens to that gallery, you could be in a really tough situation. I have heard of artists who were working with galleries and everything was going great, and then the gallery owner actually passes away, the gallery closes down, and the artist actually has trouble finding another gallery, another venue for selling their work. This is one of the reasons why I still really like to push my own sales and my work as an independent artist, working directly with collectors, because in case anything happens with the galleries that I'm working with, I still know that I will be able to continue to sell my work and run my business. Okay, so now that I've talked about the pros of working with a gallery and some of the cons, I want to talk about how I identify galleries to work with. So like I mentioned at the beginning, not all galleries are created equal. There are great galleries out there and there are horrible galleries out there. It runs the whole spectrum. Also, not all galleries are going to be a good fit for your work. Maybe you're a figurative painter like me, so you're probably not going to want to show your work, and your work's not going to do well at an abstract art gallery. Or if you're an abstract painter, you're probably not going to want to show your work at a gallery that focuses on figurative work. If a gallery doesn't want to work with you, don't take it personally. Just think, okay, it's probably not a good fit for me. In the best gallery relationship, your incentives are aligned. So the gallery is not going to want to take you on if they don't think they can sell your work, and you don't want to work with a gallery if they don't think they can sell your work. So you really want to both be on the same page. So what are the things that I look for when I'm looking for a gallery to work with? So first, I look for some major red flags. The biggest red flag is if they're asking you to pay them to exhibit your work. This is a gallery that you should just totally avoid. I've heard of these called vanity galleries, and they're often for people who they just want to have a show, they want to show their work, maybe they don't care if their work sells or not. And here, the gallery's business model is not selling art, it is basically renting space out to artists. So it rents the space out to you, and they really don't care if they sell your work or not. They're probably not going to be promoting your work, they probably don't have a strong collector base, you're probably going to have to do all of that yourself. So if you're doing all of that yourself, you may as well just rent out the space on your own. You don't really need the gallery for that. And you could probably find a space you could rent out for much cheaper. And some of these vanity galleries have bad reputations, so if you show your work there, you might actually be hurting your reputation as an artist. So I would just avoid these entirely. The second big thing I look for in a gallery is what's their collector base like? Do they have a large collector base of people who would be really interested in buying my work? Now, this can be difficult to ascertain at the beginning. If you haven't worked with the gallery before, you might not know what their collector base is like. Sometimes what you can do is you can go to their openings, you can go to their exhibitions, and you can see what work they're already selling. See if it kind of looks like the work that you have, and also see if it seems like they're selling a lot of pieces. Look and see if there's a lot of red dots in the gallery to see if the work is selling. The main way I usually address this is I submit my work to a small group show at the gallery, and I see if those pieces sell. And if I'm able to sell those pieces, then that's a good sign that there's probably strong demand at that gallery for my work. For example, the main gallery I work with in San Francisco, I started off putting my work in small group exhibitions, and I found again and again the pieces that I gave them would all sell. So I continued to give them more and more pieces over time, and also larger and more valuable pieces over time. And because they've been able to continue to sell those pieces, I've found that they have a good collector base for my work. So I would say if you're not sure about the collector base of a gallery, start small in your relationship with that gallery and try out a few pieces. And usually the gallery will also recommend this. They don't always want to take a big risk on you. They usually like to try out your work as well. So think about these group exhibitions as kind of like a small test for your work where you can find out, is this a good fit? And then the other big thing I do when I'm scoping out a new gallery is I try to talk with the artists who already show at that gallery. So either maybe I already know one of the artists who shows there, maybe I know it's a friend of a friend. If I don't know any of the artists who show there, maybe I'll go to one of their openings and try to meet those artists, or even potentially reach out on Instagram. I'd be careful with like just cold reaching out to artists. I think that you don't want to pester people too much or annoy them. I think it's better to maybe meet them at an opening and kind of see if they seem receptive. And especially if it's like a very If it's a very kind of high-end gallery that hasn't reached out to you, then maybe you don't want to reach out directly to the artists that you don't know. But usually I'm able to talk to an artist, like a friend who shows there or a friend of a friend, and I think that that's the best way to do it. And so then when I talk to these artists who are showing at the galleries that I'm interested in, the main things I usually ask is just, what's your experience been like working with the gallery? And they can tell you things like how often they tend to get a solo show, how their relationship is with the gallerist, if they're friendly, if they're more reserved. One of the big things is whether or not the gallerist will pay you on time. That's important. There are some galleries that don't do that. And they can also tell you other things, like if their work has been damaged in storage at that gallery, or if the gallery has lost some of their pieces. Like, these things happen when you give your work to a gallery sometimes. So I think it's important to do your due diligence and try to see if you hear about any of those things happening, because that could be a sign that you don't want to work with that gallery. I'd also probably refrain from asking the artist about how their work is doing at the gallery, whether they're selling much, because that can be a really personal question. It might be very sensitive, and it also might not be a great gauge for how your work would sell, because their work is probably fairly different. But overall, I think it's really great to try to meet some of the artists who are at galleries you're interested in and hear about their experience working with that gallery. So anyway, I hope you liked this video and found it helpful, and I hope I could explain why even with the high 50% cut, I still like to work with galleries. And if you're interested in working with galleries as well, I hope this gave you some ideas on things to keep in mind or things to look for when you are starting a relationship with a gallery. And this is all based on my experience as a fine artist, as a figurative painter here in San Francisco. So this might not be directly applicable to your situation, but I hope that you got some interesting information or helpful information from this video. Of course, you need to weigh the pros and cons for your specific situation, and everyone's situation is different. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any follow-up questions, please post them in the comments below. And if you did like this video, if you found it helpful, be sure to like, comment, subscribe to my channel. All of these things really help. And as always, a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for supporting this channel and making these videos happen. If you like my art, if you like my videos, and you want to help me make more, check out my Patreon at the link. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. And just as a quick note, I'm super excited to share that I recently launched a new portrait painting course on my website. In this course, we take the portrait and we break it down into simple light and shadow shapes. Then we add nuance to create and fully resolve the portrait. So if you want to see the step-by-step, real-time process for my portrait painting, be sure to check that out.